It's off. No wonder. There we go. Well, I'm glad that Doug and May invited me to speak with y'all. We're from down south, so we say y'all down there in San Diego. And so I was asked to speak on a topic related to the book that was just published recently. Also, Linda Brumley. Some of you know Linda. She helped to write the book. And so the topic then is freedom in Christ. Now, we're Americans, so obviously we think freedom's pretty good stuff, all right? That's kind of the whole deal there, right? In fact, most people who originally came here because they didn't have freedom and they wanted freedom. So we celebrate that. But here's a question I want to ask. It's just throw it out there. Maybe you can raise your hand if you have a response. What's so great about freedom? Okay, you get to choose. All right, that's the definition of freedom. But I'm asking what's so good about it, okay? That's kind of the definition of freedom. Yeah.
It gives you the freedom, what gives you the ability to walk around freely. You know, you're not confined.
Okay, so you can kind of do whatever you want. Okay, that's the definition of freedom. I'm still looking for an answer to the question, though, what's so good about freedom? I'm kind of teasing you a little bit, but I kind of want us to think about it a little bit. Okay, yeah.
Peace of mind.
Okay, peace of mind. Very good, yes.
It empowers you.
Yeah, it empowers you. Good, any other thoughts? Okay. You're happy? Okay, yeah. Yeah, to me, it really depends on what you do with your freedom. Because if we do things because we have to, there's really no pleasure. There's no joy from that. It's when we're free to choose and yet we choose to do the right thing and we give our hearts, our life, our energy to that thing. That's when we have fulfillment. When we do things because we have to, because somebody's looking over our shoulder, there's really not a lot of fulfillment that comes from that kind of action. You know, one of my favorite movies, of course, is Braveheart, right? We got some Braveheart fans? You know, and I like that thing where he says, freedom! You know? I get fired up about that. And he says, you can take our lives, but you'll never take our freedom. I get fired up about that. But the question is, freedom for what? You know, I remember, it was kind of different generation when I went off to college. It was kind of different. Because, basically the way it worked is, my parents drove me about 2 hours off to the college, They let me off there at the dorm. They said goodbye, and I was totally free. I mean, it was so exciting. I could do whatever I wanted to. I could stay up as late as I wanted to do. I could come home or not go home. I could go to class, not go to class. I could, choose my major. I mean, I had complete freedom. It was so awesome. But I used my freedom to do such stupid things. To indulge my sinful nature and do drugs and just be a total idiot. I think freedom is wasted on most Americans. What do you think? So, let's look a little bit into the idea of freedom in Christ. Let's go to Galatians chapter 5. Now, we do have an amazing freedom in Christ. Now, this is kind of strange. I'm teaching this lesson, and about 20% of you, I'm guessing, already read the book. So you're probably anticipating what I'm going to say. This kind of feels a little strange. And there's one question I normally ask that's kind of tricking people. So when we get to that question, pretend you don't know the answer, okay? If you're reading the book, you know what I'm talking about. All right, great. So just pretend, okay? Galatians chapter 5, verse 1. Paul says, it is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. Well, that's kind of a strange thing that Paul's saying here. He's saying the reason God set you free is so that you would be free. I mean, isn't that kind of obvious? That the reason He set us free is so that we'd be free? Here's how I think about it. It's kind of like this. Paul, he's like grabbing us and shaking us. He's saying, folks, you're free. I mean, I'm not kidding. You're actually free in Christ. I have an announcement for you. If you're saved, you're free. You can live wherever you want to. You can take whatever job you want to. You don't even have to share your faith. You don't have to have a quiet time. You don't have to give a single dollar into the plate. Well, I guess there is a command about that. So maybe there's a commandment there. We're free. And with freedom comes responsibility, of course. But the joy in the Christian life is the fact that we serve God because we just flat out want to serve God. And we love Him. Now, in the context, freedom from what? Now, the usual response when I ask that question is people say freedom from sin. And I agree that in Jesus we're free from sin, but that's not what Paul's talking about here. What Paul's talking about is freedom from having to do something in order to be saved. Because that's a slavery thing. If for every sin that I do, I have to do 27 Hail Marys and Hallelujahs and all that other stuff, you know what I'm talking about, or maybe I have to share my faith with 25 people to make up for the fact that, you know, I was disrespectful to my wife, that would be living in slavery. For us as Christians, we don't have to do anything to be saved other than put our faith in Jesus Christ. I don't know about you, but that means when I serve God, I feel a sense of freedom in that. And our freedom in Christ is amazing. And of course, he's comparing it to what the Jews had. Well, these rules and regulations, and at every point in their life, they're thinking, all right, what about this rule? What about that rule? Touching this, doing that at the right time in the right place. Brothers and sisters, we have a lot of freedom. But the question is, what are you going to do with that freedom? Is it going to be like me when I went off to college, which was pretty stupid? Verse 13, in the same chapter, verse 13 through 15, Paul's talking about what he expects us to do with our freedom. So again, the question is, freedom for what? Let me read in verse 13. You, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge the sinful nature. Rather, serve one another in love. The entire law is summed up in a single command: love your neighbor as yourself. If you keep on biting and devouring each other, watch out, or you'll be destroyed by each other. Now, some of us have been in our church for a while, and younger Christians, just cover up your ears. Don't listen to this because, we don't want you to know about this. But I don't know about you, but I remember a time when we didn't have quite as much freedom in our Christianity. All right? I remember having an accountability sheet. Does anybody remember that? I remember writing down how many people I shared my faith with that week and how many minutes I spent praying and studying the Bible. And I can remember specifically praying 20 more minutes so I could write it down on that piece of paper. That's not freedom. And there's no joy in that kind of service to God, because really it's service to a number and an accountability. By the way, I think accountability is a good thing in Christianity. How about voluntary accountability, where we ask for it, or we're given the chance to have it? Okay? But, a lot of us, here's the thing. What are you doing with your freedom? A lot of us, because we weren't, being accountable to our sharing our faith, you know what we did? We stopped sharing our faith. Okay, now I know why you were sharing your faith. Okay, now we know why. All right, you get the idea? A lot of us, when we had less accountability, maybe some of the stronger discipling, a lot of us used our freedom to indulge the sinful nature. Is that what Jesus gave you freedom for? What did Jesus give you freedom for? It says right here, He gave you freedom to serve one another. Christianity is kind of an odd religion. God gives us total freedom in Christ, and what's He want us to do with it? To become slaves. Voluntary slaves. Giving our life in service to other people. But you know what? If you voluntarily give yourself to serve somebody, and you see their life changing, and you see God work in their life, There's much joy and pleasure in that. I remember Jan and I said Jesus, I said Jan, and I don't know how that happened. I don't know. That's an interesting connection there. My brain is just connecting in that way. But anyway, Jan and I started working with the singles in San Diego about 8.5 years ago. And I remember, this is kind of back in the day, and I remember some of the brothers and sisters, their favorite saying was, freedom in Christ. But what did they mean by freedom in Christ? What they meant was, nobody's ever going to tell me what to do ever again. Oh, gee. Is that why we got our freedom? It says here, you have freedom in Christ. Don't use it to sin, but rather to serve one another. And he says, and if we keep on dividing and devouring one another, watch out. Again, kind of in the old days, you couldn't really criticize your leadership. That's not freedom. I mean, as if the leader is something better than everybody else. Everybody's the same, you know what I'm saying? But now we have freedom, so what do we do with our freedom? Cut down the leaders and criticize and complain? Is that what we're given our freedom for? I don't think so. Let's look at another passage on freedom. It's in 1 Peter chapter 2. So why do you share your faith? I hope it's because you love God and you want to help people come into the kingdom. That's what freedom is about. 1 Peter 2, 16 and 17, another passage about our freedom in Christ. It says here, live as free men and women. I'm adding in women. Men is generic in Greek, right? Live as free men, but do not use your freedom as a cover-up for evil. Live as servants of God. Show proper respect to everyone. Love the brotherhood of believers. Fear God. Honor the king. He says, live as free people. And then he gives a list of 6 or 7 people in a row you need to submit to. Well, that's interesting. He says, live as free men and women. How do free men and women live? You know what? They make their own decisions. And then they live by them. And they take responsibility for them. Let's not be making decisions for each other. Because then if it doesn't work out, they're going to blame you. You know what I'm saying? We need to take personal responsibility for our lives because we're free. We're free in Christ. And what do? We use our freedom to submit at certain times. Let's imagine a marriage that goes kind of like this whole freedom thing. Let's imagine the husband says to the wife, hey, you submit to me. Yeah, right. That's not going to be a very good marriage. That brother forgot to read Ephesians 5.